All right. All right. Welcome. Tonight is Tuesday, March 17th. Ahlan wa sahlan. So last week we zoomed in on the quadriceps, the anterior or the front area, big real estate in the body, this front area of the thigh. And we learned a little bit about the mechanics that go in there. What is actually going on with those muscles? What are the muscles? We watched a video in KenHub, which we'll do again this week, and I'll load it into this our Zoom archive. So you have that and you can access it at any time. So, as I've mentioned before, any of the concepts that we cover in class, of course, if anything's unclear, please come to me and ask me. I love to get into that. I love to discuss the nitty-gritty as I'm presenting the information. You know, we got a lot. It's 200 hours, so there's a lot of repetition, but also there's a lot of information. So as I move through the 200-hour curriculum, um, I am delivering the information that needs to be delivered, but you need to integrate it. And part of integrating is asking if you're not sure. So I'm here for you for that for sure. Just a little reminder. So this week we have the hamstring, which is the muscles along the back of the thigh. This is going to be one of the most common areas of tightness that you see, not just in yoga students, but in almost everyone. And often what people thinks is tightness is actually a combination of weakness, overuse, or poor coordination. So today we're going to understand something. We're going to understand them not just as an area of the body that always chronically needs stretching, but as something as a muscle group that we can activate and we can control and integrate to our deeper overall stability and function of our body. So remember also, keep in mind that when we go into different ideas, excuse me, when we go into different ideas or body groups, um, even they're isolated in time as we're learning because our mind can only take in so much, you know. Remember when we did the bones, the 206 bones, we had a few times and we went through all of the major bones. Um, but it took a few repetitions. So just keep in mind it might take you a few repetitions. And the point of learning anatomy and yoga is not so that you have this academic viewpoint. The point of learning anatomy is so like while you're doing the practice, whatever it is, whether it's your intuitive movement, your yoga practice, your sports, you take the information that you took from your anatomy lab, whatever it was, and you're just like feeling it through your body. Ah, that's where that, that's how that's working. Ah, this is working synergistically with the other one. Oh, when I bend my knee and pull upward, I can feel my low obliques pulling, engaging in my abdominals, working to raise the leg. So seeing what's happening, feeling what's happening, and being able to label the feeling. And that's essentially what you're training for as a yoga teacher is labeling the feeling and getting the language. As I mentioned before, when you're narrating your practice, that's what a yoga teacher is doing. We've designed it for them, but you start narrating your practice. Um, so you can really give useful hints to other students. So again, you must go into your practice with this information of the anatomy. You overlay it, and then you're able to understand your practice so much more, and therefore being able to describe it to other people. So let's dive in. So we're gonna watch a Ken Hub video. This is a really great video. Oh, I trailed off on a topic, what I wanted to say, as with everything that we've done. If my explanation isn't sufficient, which I really hope it is, and if not, then let's talk about it, and then I will improve how I explain also. But you can also pop any of these core competencies, this information that you truly need into YouTube, into ChatGPT, well, I shouldn't promote ChatGPT now, but into any AI or whatever you're using, a non-Zionist entity, whatever. Um, and make sure you understand it. Find out how to understand it. Or if you've watched another video that has information that you're like, how does this line up with your information, what you're saying? Send it to me. I love to go deep on these ideas. I love to make sure that my students understand. Okay, so that's all I'll say on that. So as we go into the Ken Hub video, it's under 15 minutes. I want you to notice where the hamstring attachments are. So again, the back of the thigh is what we're focused on. So we're thinking, I want you to look at the photos that they provide in the little video. We're thinking from the sits bones, the sitting bones, downward down the lower leg. We want to see how they cross two joints when we were learning about the joints. So the hamstrings are very important. They will cross the joints of the hip and also the knee. And we'll also learn just how they're involved in the actions. What are their prime actions? Multiple actions that they can do. So keep in mind also that the hamstrings are prime movers. So let's break that down. They have in two actions, they're prime movers. Hip extension, which is when we send our leg. Okay, these are my legs. Hip extension is when I send my leg behind. Oops. Let's do the other finger. When I send my leg behind. So my middle finger is my right leg. I'm putting the right leg behind. Let's see. I got a floor to stand on. So extension back, flexion forward, extension back, flexion forward. And I have something even better than that. Good old skeleton. So when we extension back and then flexion forward, extension back and flexion. Remember, extension is increasing the angle of the joint usually, and flexion is usually decreasing the angle of the joint. Is a good way to remember that. So without further ado, let me cue this video for you. So they'll refer to the hamstrings as biceps femoris. So we've heard of biceps before, yeah, but we have these are what we know, biceps. So femoris, where do we know that word from? Our femur, biceps femoris. So bi implies two, and femoris on the femur, near the femur, around the femur, something to do with the femur. Got it? All right, let's jump in. Let's share the screen. Oh la la, how do I do this? Okay. Yalla.
Hello everyone. This is Juan from Ken Hub and welcome to another anatomy tutorial where this time I'm going to be talking about the posterior thigh muscles. And this is a group of muscles that you find on, of course, the posterior or the dorsal side of your thigh. And these muscles are very important for your mobility. And we're going to be discussing the different origins, insertions, innervation, and functions associated to these structures. Now, these muscles are important for mobility, as I mentioned, because they are the extensors of the hip joint and also flexors of the knee joint. So, for that reason, they pull your leg when you're trying to swing back to kick a ball, for example. This is a kind of movement that these muscles would be associated to. Now, one reminder here is that let's first list them before we talk about these muscles. What you need to know is that the posterior thigh muscles are comprised, or is a group comprised of three muscles, and these are the biceps femoris, the semimembranosus, and the semitendinosus. Now, in general, the posterior thigh musculature runs from the dorsal side of your pelvis towards the lower leg and then shapes the dorsal thigh or your posterior thigh. And you can clearly see here on this image, even though we have here still the gluteal muscles, which is a different group of muscles that that we have here a tutorial here at Ken Hub that you can learn about. And also these muscles, these are the lower leg muscles. There are a different group of muscles also covered on tutorials here at KenHub. Let's start with the very first muscle here on our list. This seen here highlighted in green in both of these images. On the left side, you see the muscle in a relaxed position, and on the right side is contracted.
All right, just for orientation, if you can't tell, so this is on the right side of your screen, I believe. It is not mirrored, I'm not sure. But where this little curly is, this is your tailbone going down, okay? So we have the femur just to orient you, and then we have the bicep behind. It's kind of looking at the leg from the side view, like from this view. And then they have got just this full-on back view on the next to it, okay? So continuing on.
And this muscle is known as the biceps femoris. Now, the biceps femoris is the largest and strongest of the three muscles that we just listed before, and it consists of two parts, the long head and the short head. And you can clearly see here on this image where it's contracted, the long head here going all the way up, and then you have the short head here. And we're going to learn the origin points for both of these heads and also the insertion points right following this slide. Now let's start with the origin point for the long head. And what you need to know is that the long head of the biceps femoris is going to originate from the ischial tuberosity, now as well as the caudal part of the sacrotuberous ligament. And you can clearly see here on this image, this is the ischial tuberosity right about here. And you can clearly see the origin point for the biceps femoris, or for the long head of the biceps femoris. And as you see here on this list, the ligament, the sacrotuberous ligament, is also going to serve as an origin point for the long head. Now moving on to the short head of the biceps. And in terms of origin points, you need to know that this part of the muscle is going to originate from the linea aspera, which is a rough line at the dorsal side of the femur. And the muscle, the short head, is also going to originate from another point, bony structure, that is known as the lateral supracondylar line of the femur. Now let's take a look at the insertion point for the biceps femoris. And both heads of the biceps unite at the popliteal fossa to a common tendon inserting at the lateral side of the head of the fibula, and you can clearly see here on this image. So this is the lateral side of your leg, and the fibula is here. This is the head of the fibula and will serve as insertion point for the biceps femoris. Also important to mention that this is the lateral limitation of the popliteal fossa, and you can feel it if you touch your popliteal fossa and go laterally. You can feel this insertion point or this tendon. Time for us to move on to the different functions associated to the biceps. And now you have.
Okay, so just going into what he said, it's a little hard to see my skeleton. I put his leg up, her leg up. It's a female skeleton. So if you go, I'm going to stand here for a minute and lift my leg up. If you go in behind your knee, so go in behind your knee, even my knee is flexed, and just feel these gnarly pieces. This is what he's talking about, these insertion points on either side. I'm on either side, and just go in there and just feel that connective, you know? So even while we're watching videos with chunks of the body, doesn't hurt to put your hands where they're working and really try to integrate that knowledge. Continuing on.
Have an image here on your right side that shows the muscle in action, and we're looking at it from a lateral view. And you can clearly see here moving the hip joint and also the knee joint. And for that reason, let's add that the long head of the biceps is going to contribute to extension of the leg at the hip joint and also is going to be responsible for stabilizing the hip joint. And you can see here an arrow that shows extension of the thigh. Now, when the long head and the short head work together, what's going to happen is these are going to be able to flex the knee joint, as you can clearly see here on this image as well. Now, also, the biceps femoris is the only muscle from that list that we talked about, the posterior thigh muscles, that can perform a little bit of external rotation of the knee joint, indicated here by this arrow. We have covered the attachment points and the functions for the biceps. It is time for us to now cover logically the innervation of this muscle. Now we're looking at the highlighted nerve here on the image, which is the tibial nerve. And what you need to know is that the biceps femoris muscle is innervated by the sciatic nerve that on its way from, or the nerve comes all the way from the pelvis to the leg, and the sciatic nerve then splits up to be the tibial and also the peroneal. It has a peroneal part that we're going to look at. And the long head is going to be then innervated by the tibial nerve, while the short head is going to be innervated by the other portion of the sciatic nerve, which is the common fibular nerve, or also known as the common peroneal nerve. Moving on to the second muscle on our list of the posterior thigh muscles, seen here highlighted in green. On the left side, you see the muscle relaxed, while on the right side, it's contracted as well and performing some of its actions. And this is the semimembranosus. Now, just like the long head of the biceps femoris, the semimembranosus will originate at the ischial tuberosity, and we can clearly see here. So this is the ischial tuberosity, the insertion point for the biceps, and then it.
Okay, and again, ischial tuberosity is what? So I was pointing to this area on the skeleton. I'm not sure how well you can see it. It's like white on white, Mylish. This in front, from in front of the skeleton. A little, that's not even great either. Um, that contrast. So the ischial tuberosity is our sits bones, okay? And when he keeps saying the biceps, he's still referring to biceps femoris. So just get it into your mind that not only you've learned your whole life these hoa are bicep, but we need to get into our mind that those are also biceps. So if I think about my arms and legs, my arm, as I decrease the angle, it's my bicep flexing, contracting, pulling the lower arm towards the upper arm, decreasing the angle of the joint. Just like if I have my leg, don't mind my socks, it's still cold. So just like if I have my leg and I close the angle of the joint, this would be the same as my arm is straight, my leg is straight, bend, straight, bend. You got it? So just creating that relationship through the body. Oh, I have two mouse on my count. Mice? Would I use plural for mice? I have two mice. One's a wireless, one's I just anyway.
The semimembranosus, also using this part of the hip bone to originate from or to arise from. And then it goes all the way down to insert at the medial condyle of the tibia. And you can also see clearly on this image. And you can also add that the oblique popliteal ligament will serve as an insertion point for the semimembranosus. So write this down in case you're asked on your exam. Now let's take a look at the different functions associated to the semimembranosus, and we have an image of the muscle in action on the right side. And this is the lateral view of the hip and thigh and also your knee, and you can see how it's contributing to the movement of all these structures. Now, as I mentioned, the semimembranosus and like the biceps femoris, this muscle is going to contribute to extension of the hip joint, as you can see here, or extension of the thigh at the hip joint, and also flexion of the knee joint, as you can see here indicated by this last arrow. Now, another function that is important to remember here about the semimembranosus, this muscle is going to contribute to internal rotation of the knee joint, represented here by this last arrow. If you ask me, what is the innervation of the semimembranosus? This is it, the highlighted or the nerve highlighted in green. This is the tibial nerve, which will serve as the innervation for the semimembranosus. Moving on to the last muscle on our list with a similar name is known as the semitendinosus. And this muscle, in terms of origin points, just like the other posterior thigh muscles or the semitendinosus, will originate at the ischial tuberosity, as you can also clearly see here on this image. The origin point or the ischial tuberosity serving as origin point for the semitendinosus. And another thing that you need to remember is that the sacrotuberous ligament is going to serve as origin point for the semitendinosus as well. In terms of insertion point, the muscle is going to go all the way down to insert at the medial aspect or surface of the tibia, as you can see here on the pes anserinus, or the superficial part of the pes anserinus, which is found next to the tibial tuberosity. Let's take a look now at the different functions associated to the semitendinosus. And like the other posterior thigh muscles, it's going to contribute to extension of the hip joint, extension of the thigh at the hip joint. You can say that as well. And also, this muscle is going to help flex the knee joint, as you can see on this last arrow. Important to remember here that another function of the semitendinosus is going to include the internal rotation of the knee joint, seen here represented by this arrow on the bottom of the image. Another question in your head might be, what is the innervation of the semitendinosus? And again, you just need to remember that this muscle is going to be innervated by the tibial nerve, just like the semimembranosus. Now, before I end this tutorial, there is a term here that I would like to clarify that I mentioned a few times, known as pes anserinus. Now, this is commonly is used as a exam question, and I want to clarify before we complete this tutorial. And pes anserinus is an anatomic name that we give to conjoined tendons at the medial aspect of the knee. Now, pes anserinus is a Latin term that means goose foot. And what happens is that these muscles are going to form this tendon that will then insert on the medial proximal surface of the tibia. And these muscles include the semitendinosus. If you remember correctly, I mentioned this on the previous slides. And another one is going to be the gracilis, is going to contribute to the pes anserinus, and the sartorius. So these three muscles will come together to form this goose foot and then insert on the medial proximal surface of the tibia. Another fact that is important to add here, so you can remember this for the next exam, is that sometimes the insertion of the semimembranosus is referred to as the pes anserinus profundus. So keep that also in mind. Now that you just completed this video tutorial, that it's time for you to continue your learning experience by testing and also applying your knowledge. There are three ways you can do so here at KenHub. The first one is by clicking on our Start Training button. The second one is by browsing through our related articles library. And the third one is by checking out our atlas. Now, good luck, everyone, and I will see you next time.
Okay, halas. We'll stop the share here. All right, so a nerdy little video for you. Let me get back into the notes. Oh, also, I didn't mention, as always, as usual, check notes in our Google Drive. Every tab in the Google Drive is labeled with what you got going on. I'm just reviewing the notes here. All right. So just keeping in mind what we just saw in the video, hamstrings as prime movers. So they are the primary drivers of two key actions, hip extension, bringing our leg back behind us. Bring the right finger back. And then knee flexion, the bending of the knee. So when my leg is straight, it's not, I'm sitting at my desk, so it's not great. When my leg is straight, when I bend my knee, that is just like when I flex my arm, that is my biceps femoris closing the angle of my knee joint. Okay. And then when I take my leg further behind me, like I'm doing tendu back, a ballet, leg extension back, or if we keep it in yoga terms, I'm doing anytime I step back for a warrior, I extend back, but I'm thinking more of extension lifting. So warrior three, when we're balancing the balancing angle, this is one also. So think of that leg going behind, half locust pose, even though we support, we have the leg, we're prone, we're on our belly, and we have the leg extending up and backwards. Okay. So anytime that your body's here and the leg is behind it, that's extension, that's the hamstring working. Or you had a really stressful day and I got there. So in yoga, they become the prime movers in forward folds. Our hamstrings get stretched in forward folds, eccentric control. So remember eccentric and concentric contractions. So as we hinge forward, we're stretching. For back bends, as we lift it, they are assisting the glutes. It's kind of extension, right? So the whole body. And then here we have standing poses like warrior three, as I mentioned, half moon. Stabilize and extending the back leg. Half moon is the, sorry, in my notes, not our half moon, not our Ardha Chandrasana. Best half moon, a more advanced version that's not in our curriculum. So it's a different one. We'll talk about that in class. So the key insights is they don't just stretch, they're actively working while lengthening. So this again is eccentric contraction. Example, our forward folds, the hamstrings are not passive. They're controlling your descent. So you know how you can kind of roll yourself up and down? The hamstrings are helping with that. It's not just the muscles of the back or the abdominals. They're helping so you don't collapse into your joints. So in yoga, it shows up everywhere. So when we're forward folding, our hamstrings, as I said, work eccentrically. They're lengthening while controlling the movement. So slowly remember our visual of lengthening the muscle tissues, lengthening the fibers. It's not just it's not just a piece of plastic or paper or it's a living thing. So it's always engaged and aware, okay? So it's even when I fold forward, I'm not just dumping forward. It's living, it's breathing. So it's controlling the movement because if that happened, the body goes too far forward in the forward fold, you can keep going, tear the hamstring, and we'll get into contraindications and injuries around these insertion points also. So when you come up for a fold from the fold, forward fold, or you lift into something like warrior three, extending one leg back, they shift into concentric contraction, helping you stabilize and rise. So think eccentric contraction is what I'm hanging forward in the forward fold. I'm going to say passive, but I don't mean passive. I'm forward, folded forward. And when I start to come up, eccentric. So eccentric when I'm forward, and then I have a concentric contraction when they're working to bring me up, or when I'm holding the leg up and back. Okay, that would be when I'm in a concentric contraction. So they're not passive, they're intelligent and responsive, like your whole body. SubhanAllah. So, power and elastic energy. This is something that people don't necessarily associate with yoga. Your hamstrings are part of your power system. So remember I was talking about the body, if we think about the body as real estate and like things that bigger pieces of real estate should work more. Makes sense, right? Um, makes sense, right? So, oh, here, sorry, my just having a hard time fitting everything onto one screen here. I got lots of notes this week. So it's part of your power system and your stabilizers and your stability. So they are the hamstrings, the backs of the legs. They're deeply connected through and part of the posterior chain. So I sent in the WhatsApp group Tom Myers is his name, and he does anatomy trains. I put careful graphic content, cadaver content. Um, so cadaver is when someone donates their body to science. And so they've been studying the anatomy train. So up until recently, how they approached the dissection of the cadaver has been kind of incomplete. They've cut through the fascia. We've learned about all of our organs isolated. We've learned about all of our muscles and groups of muscles isolated. And so what Tom Myers' innovation is to the study of anatomy this way in anatomy trains is the the understanding that even though the muscles can be divided in their separate isolated bags, this is this muscle, this is the bicep, this is the hamstring, this is serratus anterior, this is pectoralis, this is rectus abdominis. So even though we can take all of the groups of the muscles and divide them and see them clearly as their own thing, we have discovered fascia. It's been there. It's not newly there. It's been there. It's just how we are looking at the whole unit is changing. So when a lot of anatomy came into print and got discovered and what's been perpetuated for the last 80 years, 70, 60, 100 years in anatomy was you have to remember the doctors who are doing this, they're they're dark and they weren't thinking of the body in a holistic way. So they were often body snatchers, stealing bodies from graves. I read a lot about that actually in old anatomy books about where did they get the information, where did they get the cadavers. Um, and they were like prescribing cocaine at that time. Okay, so let's just acknowledge that our information from that time is incomplete. And now that we have a more holistic way to look at the body, we're able to measure how electricity runs through the body. We're able to do MRI imaging and see fluids run through the body. Before this was not possible to go and look inside of a body before it was dead, before it became a cadaver. Now we're able to observe living bodies. So we see the process and the osmosis and the changing of the cells and how things work synergistically together and fluids passing between different membranes. How this doesn't happen in a cadaver. These processes cease to exist when a body is dead. So yes, it was great that we had that, but there is a lot to learn. And the more uh, information that we have now from living bodies makes more sense to apply to a living body. Like, why would me, as a living body, I am living, I hope, why would I want to study a dead body? I'm not a dead body, and I don't need to ever apply that information to myself. I need to apply information from a living body. So this is finally where we are in our anatomy science. Um, so we have these amazing connective tissues that run and connect through the whole thing called fascia. So me as a yin yoga teacher, I've been on the fascia train for years. This is just like new knowledge in the general public. I've been nerding on fascia for so long. So let's dive into this world. Um, the posterior chain. So back to Tom Myers and his work about the anatomy trains, rather than take each muscle piece, okay, these are the calves, this is the four different chunks of the quadricep. biceps femoris or hamstring, glutes, medius, maximus, minimus, IT band, kaza, all of these. Um, we would cut them before in our old-timey cocaine doctor time. We would cut them and isolate them all, okay? So now what Tom Myers has done with his anatomy trains information is rather than he says it like this, turning the scalpel sideways. So rather than just like take one piece and remove it, it's just like slide the scalpel along the lines, like kind of following meridians, and see what muscles kind of, there's like a thick band of fascia that would join them quite naturally once you're in there, and observing these. So what he was able to observe is these different primary stabilizing lines along the body, which he calls anatomy trains. So we have our back line, we have spiral line, we have many, anyway, this is a more advanced anatomy concept. But it's not harmful for you to look as burgeoning yoga teachers to look at advanced anatomy concepts, just to slowly build on it. So just keep in mind, we're using KenHub. It's super comprehensive. It's got really great resource for like the muscles isolated, but there is a lot of other information once you've integrated what we have in the KenHub to like make your information and your knowledge aktar, okay, more. So the hamstrings are deeply connected in the posterior chain. They work with the glutes and the low back to create force and propulsion. Propulsion to propel me forward. So they work with the glutes. The hamstrings are not firing on their own. Think about bridge pose where I'm on my back. I have my feet on the floor. I press my feet into the floor. I lift my hips. I squeeze my glutes. And that's a cue that you're going to give your students. Do you ever hear a teacher, or did you hear me say, or any other teacher, and now engage the hamstring? It's not so much of a cue that happens in bridge pose, as an example, but it is surely happening. If you want to try bridge pose and just kind of see for yourself, we go up, we say squeeze the glutes, we lift the hips towards the ceiling, we're on our back lift, press into the heels, press up, stretch the front of the hips, and squeeze the glutes. The hamstrings are also squeezing too. This is extension. And what at the same time? Flexion, flexion of the knee, but also extension because the hips. Okay, say my, this hand is getting a lot of use for this as a demo model tonight. This is my body on the floor, my back and shoulders. I have no head, okay? And then this is my feet. How do I, wait, let me back up for a minute. So we're in bridge, okay? And my knees are bent. I can't do it with the skeleton. My knees are bent and I'm thrusting the pelvis upward. So this is kind of extension. It's not kind of, it is extension back. So my leg is also extending behind me, even when the knee is flexed. So I have two actions happening at the same time. So they create force and propulsion. Think about it as you walk forward, pressing forward. Think about that action of bridge pose. When I'm walking, the legs down and pushing into the floor. I'm walking, I'm pushing the floor behind me, behind, and going forward, moving forward, propelling forward. So when you lengthen the hamstring, think of them as a rubber band, okay? We lengthen, they store elastic energy. When they engage, they release that energy. So even in a slow practice, this shows up. Transitioning out of forward folds, lifting into balances, like when we engage and contract and bring our awareness and energy towards our center line, and also help stabilizing us in dynamic movement, shift, forward, back. Like, it doesn't have to be like a long, like not yoga style. We use them for all of our movement. Um, so into the fascia connection. So let's zoom out. Um, Back into the anatomy train. So the hamstrings are part of something called the superficial back line. Okay, so this is the Tom Myers anatomy train stuff. This is a continuous line of fascia that runs from the soles of your feet, the bottom of your feet, up through your calves and hamstrings along the back of the leg. So calves, lower leg, your hamstrings, into your spine, all through the back, and all the way into your skull. When someone says, my hamstrings are tight or the back of my leg is tight, it's not just the hamstrings. It's going to be this whole superficial back line of the body. Could be tension from anywhere along that entire back body. So again, when you hear that term, oh, stretch out the back body when you're in forward fold, yes, you might be really feeling in your hamstrings, but you can relief and stretch that whole superficial back line. So just remember it's from the head down the whole back of the body into the soles of the feet. Okay? So that's what you're stretching. Remember, we're always working with the whole system and not isolated parts. The more that you understand that the body is a holistic instrument and everything affects everything else, the better you're going to integrate all of this. So, strength and our safe stretching. So, how do we work the hamstrings in a smart way? First, we don't just stretch them, we strengthen them because overstretching without strength leads to instability, lack of control, strain. So, we need to have balance between length and strength. And this is always ideal for any type of movement. I don't want to have over flexibility and not the strength to bring me back. If we take into an example the movement of a very, very radical deep back bend. So say you can just go down and you go backwards and you drop yourself back to the floor, you touch the floor. Wow. But then you're like, oh shit, I'm stuck here. Because you don't have the core to bring yourself up or the control. So if you don't have the, like maybe you went down, but you didn't lower yourself down. Like you got to the halfway point and you went "Rrr," and fell to your hands, you know? So always be sure that we work our range of motion. It's not just how far. My range of motion is not just I can take my finger back this far. I can't take my finger back that far just with its own strength, but I can take it back with my other one. So this is not my range of motion for my strength. This is my range of motion for my flexibility, my range of motion for my strength. It doesn't go that far, right? So it goes to here, working, and then I can go shoop more, but that is not. So concentric, eccentric. Okay. When we fold, forward fold, we can keep a micro bend in the knees, not locking out the backs of the knees. So why not lock out the backs of the knees? It puts pressure on the bones. And then also that's when we can stress the insertion points that we saw in the video. So we don't want to put stress on the insertion point. When we're doing yin yoga, I'm always like, focus the stress, focus the tension in the belly of the muscle. So the belly of the muscle, if the muscle is, I'm always trying to find things to use. Oh, wait, here I have some nice smudging sage. So the two ends of the sage are my insertion points. So the belly of, and this is very muscle looking also, the belly of the muscle will be here. It would be a little bit better if it rounded a bit bigger. So let's just say these are like little skinny, more skinny on the end here. We don't want our muscle having one of these. So let's just say it's a little more skinny on the end. And this is where it connects to the bone over here where my fingers are. And then so when we apply our stretch, we want it to be more here in the center, not close to the bone because we don't want that. And that's a bad day. And it's very possible to happen. Ala fikra, by the way. So engage the quads slightly. Unless we're in yin yoga mode, we don't want to be totally passive. In yin yoga, especially if you're standing, yin yoga, keep in mind, is a yin yoga is done passive, but it's also done on the ground. So I'm not like standing and trying to hold myself up and trying to be passive at the same time. Doesn't work, doesn't make sense. So remember yin, right now we're talking about yang or hatha, okay? Let's see here. When the quads engage a little bit, so quads engage, how do I do that? That's like when you say pull the kneecaps up. Engage through the quads. You'll feel that kneecap lift, and you'll see tone. If you're using a mirror, you'll see the tone and the shape of the muscles of your legs. And I engage the quads, pulling the kneecap up. The hamstrings are able to release a little more safely and effectively because it's not just floppy, okay? So they feel like they have a bit of support when they have that. So how do they know what to feel? It's our nerve endings, so that this is being communicated with the brain in your subconscious. So we want in hatha, we want to have active flexibility. So when you're teaching hatha yoga class, you want to have the active flexibility. The goal is not passive flexibility, that's yin. The goal is active flexibility for hatha. So meaning we have strength at the end of our range. So remember this one I showed you taking my finger. I have no, like, it just snaps back. The finger is like maybe not the best way to put that. Um, as an example, pulling back your leg, pulling your thigh behind you. How far can I extend my leg back just standing? And then if I have a strap on my foot, I can pull my leg even back more behind me, but I don't have the strength to hold it there. So having strength at the end of your range, that's what that means, okay? So instead of just hanging in a stretch, we move slowly, we add the engagement, and we build control. This can be frustrating at first because you might actually realize you have way less control than you thought. But this is what creates lasting mobility and resilience for the body. So, yoga really, really encourages this. But people don't respect that encouragement, if that makes sense. So, students are always thinking that they need to, if it's forward fold, I need to put my head to the floor or I need to close my belly to my thighs. Like, cool if you can do that, but it's not the point of the yoga class, The point is relief. The point is it's not just how you can put your body in this shape, you know? We want to be able to put our body in the shape safely. And if our body doesn't move into the shape with ease and grace and strength and control, that's not the shape for us today. So it's very important just to know what is our range of motion, what is our range of strength, and how we can gradually build that just by extending a little more each day in our practice or just building a little more strength. It's a consistent work in progress, okay? Consistency trumps everything. So just little practices here and there. Just think we're like working through the fibers, whether you're building strength or you're stretching, it's kind of the same process. Just when you're building strength, it's like you tear down the fiber, like you destroy the protein. And then when you're stretching, it's not the same effect, like not the same metabolic effect. But it's this chipping away, digging, peeling, shearing. Think of that moving. Yeah, your hair is a really good representation of the threads, the meat that make your muscles. So remember, it's threads of meat, guys. So get that visual. And so what do threads of meat? They're strengthening. They have to rift together. Remember, we saw the tissue? They contraction, rift together, or when I'm stretching, they pull apart. So get that visual, Yani. However that works for you. Maybe it's not my hands doing this, but whatever visual works for you, Yani, get it into your mind. Um, so hamstrings and quads, the integration of these two. So last week we had quadriceps, this week we have hamstrings. Let's bring it full circle. The hamstrings and the quadriceps are opposites, but they're also partners. So they both live on the thigh, number one. The quads straighten the leg. So think about when you are standing, standing on one leg poses especially. Um, so quad straighten the leg, hamstrings bend the leg. Okay. But they don't fight each other. They coordinate together. When one contracts, the other one lengthens. So this creates a smooth movement It protects the joint. Because imagine if the muscle wasn't and the joint was just like swinging, like it's a disaster. We would be a pile, a crumple on the floor, we would be a pile on the floor. If one side is too dominant, so one side is more developed than the other, this could happen for many reasons, being left-handed versus being right-handed. Maybe you played a particular sports that really overdeveloped. Maybe you had an injury when you were younger and you spent some time in a cast or with one leg used less than the other. And then slowly that will develop that the one leg is more emaciated and small. So it can get the imbalance. Um, you can have not just one side versus the other. You can have overly tight hamstrings or overly strong quads, and you can have imbalance that way too. A lot of people generally, and I'm just like throwing a broad net, what I've seen as a teacher for over 15 years is super over tight quads and under strengthened and tight hamstrings. So it's not even that they're tight because they were overworking. They are tight because you're sitting all the time with your legs bent. It's yeah, it's just a modern human problem. So remember, the strength in the quads can help safely deepen your hamstring length. So having strong quads can help me get more flexibility in my hamstring. Okay. I'm really working on the back of my hamstrings. Don't forget about your quads. So again, thinking about the body as a holistic entity, it's all together. We're not separating one piece from the other. Strong hamstrings support the back body and protect the joints. So we need to have awareness of front and back. So as you move through practice this week, I want you to feel that you're not just stretching your hamstrings, but you're controlling through them. You're activating the hamstring and you're integrating them into the whole body. This is where you'll be really able to understand that. Um, Activating the hamstrings. Let's go back to a pose we spoke of earlier, the bridge. So bridge is a really great pose just for activating because you're on your back, so you can't get into too much trouble there on the yoga mat. And you're not going to add a lot. So pushing up into bridge again and feeling that extension, but also engaging. So you'll engage the glutes, but you'll also engage the hamstrings. So this can be a good way. You're like, am I feeling it? You can also just like stand, put your hands on the back of the chair and extend the leg back like ballet style or whatever, something at that height, countertop. And your glutes will be involved too. So just remember that back body line is all connected and it's all working together. Let's see here. Oh. So just to review the posterior chain of the body, we have the glutes, we have the calves and the lower back, thoracolumbar fascia. This is what we'll be diving into next week. We'll be working with glutes and thoracolumbar fascia, which is what we target specifically and primarily in our yin series. Um, so this posterior chain is responsible for jumping, sprinting, running, the propulsion, propelling ourselves forward, lifting. Remember, lift with your knees, not with your back. You know that I'm sure you've all heard that. Yeah, bend, squat down, and then pick up the thing. Sudden directional changes. Fast, fast, fast. Okay. Even though yoga is slow, the stored elastic energy still exists. So we're like building and massaging that energy. Um, the hamstrings store and release elastic tension like a rubber band. When lengthened, again, they store energy. When engaged, they release power. In yoga, again, coming out of the deep fold, transitioning into standing, lifting into inversions. What does that mean? If I'm taking my legs, inversions is when you're upside down. So if I'm in handstand or headstand, with my elbows on the ground, or handstand with my hands, or maybe I'm against a wall, or just freestanding balance upside down to kicking my legs up and extending up through the legs, reaching my toes and feet towards the ceiling. That's going to be engaging the hamstrings and the glutes and everything, actually. But think about like the kick up into the handstand, or if I'm going to kick up and do the handstand against the wall, standing, it doesn't matter. All of those. So, so again, about that superficial back line, that fascia chain. So remember the soles of the feet, through the calves, the back of the legs, the back of the thighs, those hamstrings, sacrum, center of the back, lower back, up the spine, and all the way to here. Doot, 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 doot. Imagine here is connected to the sole of my feet and through the Achilles tendon, the back of the ankle. So here's where most people get it wrong. The mistake is only stretching. I just got to stretch. It's so tight, I got to stretch. This leads to micro tears, strain, instability, first of all. Our goal is, as we mentioned, balancing our strength with mobility. So mobility is awesome. Strength is even more awesome because the mobility is just there if you're already mobile. Strength is going to help you maintain your mobility, but also keep you from injuring yourself with mobility. So, strengthening your hamstrings. We strengthen them through hip extension work. So, at the bar ballet, legs back, legs back, legs back, legs back. Stability under load, squats. Yeah. So, yoga, how does this translate into yoga moves? We have the bridge pose, as we mentioned. We have the locust pose, as we mentioned. We have warrior three, as mentioned. Deadlift movements, which hinging at the hips. Okay. Coming up with a flat back. Oh, my bedtime, my bedtime alarm. Um, So a cue you could use for students in yoga is lift, engage through the glutes and feel the back of your legs help the glutes. Lift from the back of the legs, not just the glutes. So safe stretching. Remember the hamstrings cross two joints, the knee and the hip. So our alignment matters. You know how we're always talking about knee over the ankle and that rotation. Why did I say it in that voice? All of a sudden, I become an old man when I say knee over the ankle. Oh, God. Okay. So the alignment matters so much here because remember, knees, if they're pulled this way or this way, the force downward is in the wrong place. And then this can cause really bad issues, all kinds of issues. Let's not do that. So, hamstrings, they cross two joints. So, the alignment's so important. Our safe approach, and we're always trying to be safe. We never want to injure ourselves or other people in our class. Of course not. We want to have always the soft knees or micro bend. We want to hinge from the hips, not rounding the spine. And engage our quads. This creates the reciprocal release and this counterbalance thing going on that we were talking about. This is a principle called in anatomy terms reciprocal inhibition. And it's when the quads release, so the hamstring, or when the quads engage, so your hamstrings can release. You can think of reciprocal inhibition. Think of those words, reciprocal inhibition. So inhibition means like no worries, no concern, inhibited. It's not, yeah, inhibited. So when it's reciprocal, that means I'm being supported so I can feel free, essentially, to put it into non-medical terms. Active flexibility. This is what we strive for in dance and yoga and general movement of life. This is our sweet spot, we can call it. The goal is strength at the end of the range, all right? So, example, half splits with engagement. It's not just like dropping into your splits, it's controlling yourself down. Um, it's controlling yourself down. The slow fold transition, slowly folding down with the flat back or slowly coming up with the flat back. or isometric holds. Like say I hold in 90-degree bend, I'm hinged at the hips. My hands are on my thighs. I'm halfway down. So inhale, reach up. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, halfway lift. I'm in like 90-degree position. This my fingers and this is my head. This is my body hinged at the hips. Yeah. This builds our control, our resilience, our awareness, and our prevention. So our big integration of this idea here is the hamstrings are not just tight muscles to stretch. They are stabilizers, they are power generators, and they are connectors in a full body fascial system that we use every day. Um, when you teach it this way to your students, you're not going to go as in depth as we are now in the training, of course, but giving them a few more cues, letting students know that the real estate, you can just give them this concept, the real estate of the body. So look at the body, look at the pieces. This part's big, this part's big. That one is intended to work. This part's small. That one is not intended to work as hard as the big one. Very practical, very logical way to look at it. Just look at it this way. Let's look at the real estate. So again, hamstrings, quads, massive real estate in percentage wise of the body. It takes up a big percentage of the body. The thigh is big. So they are intended to support the body. Okay. Everything in nature makes sense if you look at it and you learn about it. Learn how it's working behind the scenes. So they're stabilizers, they're power generators, and full body fascial system connectors. So that is that. I encourage you tonight, go through those poses as we mentioned. Bridge pose, locust pose, warrior three, leg extension back. Work on that. Could be great. And just see if you're able to feel the hamstrings, and also the quads as well. See if you can feel how they're working synergistically together and how they support each other. Um, Next week, we will be together. Let's see this. Where's my calendar? 1 second. All right, so today's the 17th. Yeah. So absorb that, you guys. We here, for us tuning in from Egypt, this is the end of Ramadan. We're going into our Eid weekend, long weekend here. Um, so please enjoy your holiday and hopefully enjoying your holiday means doing some yoga practice. And I'm trying to see when we'll meet next. Let's stay in touch for the 24th. I really want to get into the thoracolumbar fascia. So we're moving up, okay? We slide. So we need to get into this group, the glutes here, and the thoracolumbar fascia. This is going to tie more into our yin poses. At first, we're really working with how to break it down in hatha terms, and then we'll be really applying it to our yin poses. So thoracolumbar fascia, thoracic, thoracal, lumbar, in between. Okay. So that's what we're going to focus on next week. And the glutes. Get into those legs, ladies, and your rotation. Rotation. That's the legs. That's your glutes rotating. Do your rotation, get into your poses, go through your warrior series, go through your sequence A or sequence B, and feel those legs. Really develop that picture inside of the mind. And then from there, curb the languaging. So again, I'm giving you always templates of how to teach, what languaging to use. But as you develop as teachers, you're going to develop your own way of saying it, not necessarily just regurgitating what your teacher is saying, but developing your own way to say it. Um, and you're super welcome to use the same cues that I use them. They make sense, so use them. But also just have that deep understanding. So when you're using the cues from someone else, if you are, that you understand what they mean. You're not just repeating them. Okay. So this is called integration. So I want to thank you for being with me tonight. I hope you enjoyed that little segment on the hamstrings, just diving a bit deeper into that. And next week we will go into the glutes and the thoracolumbar fascia. Shukran, shukran, and kul sana wa antum tayyibin. Salam, salam.